Was there a moment that you had where you decided that this was the story that you wanted to tell?
Of course, during the pandemic, I was actually in Europe. So I got to see how, Asian looking people were treated both in Europe and in the United States. And that just made me, want to go home, obviously. And so I did. And I started to well, I would say before that, I had never been interested in talking with any other adoptees. That was another really important part. I was always just turned off by whenever my mom would try to introduce me to Asian families. Like they
Mm,
culturally and ethnically Chinese most of the time. And I was just like, I don't understand why you're doing this. Just leave me alone. But of course, during such a time, it's in those times where, of course, I think humans need the most community and not have to explain themselves. I think that's healing in its own way. And so I started connecting with other adoptees, either from Korea or from China specifically. And we just started talking and having some support groups, and talking about different experiences within the COVID pandemic with some of the racism that was going on and how we felt.
of
And it
course.
was really at that point where I was like, okay, like talking with people that look like me, not only look like me, but they've had the exact same experience of being adopted and having all of these different layers of identity, you know, thrown onto them at the same time. They have so many good insights, and that makes me know that I think I also have a story to share. I discovered though, I love what Brene Brown says about it too, but just, shame is going to keep on growing if you hide it, right? And
Love
so
Brene Brown. Love
yeah,
her.
she's awesome. She's amazing. Um, and but that I mean that is so, so true. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of hiding even, what I'm doing with my YouTube channel as well from my family, from my friends. I mean, no one even knew because I was just ashamed also of the YouTube channel and also ashamed of what I was feeling about my adoption, how I was figuring that out on my own. And so, really knowing, okay, I remember even last Christmas, I had brought it up to my partner, I think I'm going to share my story.
What do you think, or do you know, that you were protecting?
I'll say I was protecting myself from even thinking about loss and grief, I think, because there's still like so much grief and loss in adoption itself. And I think a lot of adoptees can resonate with me on the fact that we hear so much about the adoptive parents and how they're just so happy to have this new kid in their lives. Um, but there is so much loss, and it'll kind of stay with us for however long we live. Coping with that loss and that grief, part of that was um, dealing with the shame and coming out with it in a vulnerable way to other people who I knew that would understand. That was very healing in itself. And the fact that I, announced that I was going to learn Chinese as well in that same video, that was also just a way of reclaiming what I felt like I still had control over.
For you, how has being able to connect to Mandarin, how has it changed you?
I think within the language community, um, now I feel I can relate to people more, especially if they're learning Chinese. And it's just nice to be able to relate to someone else who's learning the same language or a similar language in the same family. But I always noticed, in person, I am definitely not comfortable, I mean, talking really at all. I noticed, I would always turn the volume down when I was maybe walking to a restaurant or something, and there would be someone passing by, and I was like, oh, they're going to hear that I'm learning Mandarin. And then I feel, there's a lot of an feeling like an imposter in that way.
Mm,
And, I'm not sure what to do about that. And that's okay that I don't know right now. As I get, a little bit more exposure to it, and again, giving myself time to reflect about how I want to move around with this language. Maybe after all, I figure that I won't want to speak it with anyone except with other adoptees. Then maybe that's what I'll do. But yeah, I mean, just being open to that possibility and knowing that that is gonna crop up again, the whole feeling imposter and stuff.